Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and you caught me working on a track. I'm fooling around with various things. But I have a plugin which looks like this. And hey, you can do this. We'll turn it back off for a second. This is Tube here. Let me hush some of this stuff up for a second. Here's the deal. Tube is a very simple plugin, and the whole idea from it is that you should be able to take a single button, a single plugin, and go, oh my god, it's much better. So here is, and my voice is also running through it. If I turn on Tube at the lowest setting, you have a kind of a bigger vibe to things. It's a little bit more expansive. Turn it back off. Set it to about halfway. This time you'll probably really hear it. You think, huh? But wait, there's more. We can turn it up all the way again. And then when we hit the Tube button, notice it's in all caps. What do you think of that? So, let's cut some of these things down. I have a lawnmower going, so I might as well leave some of this stuff going on. Here is the deal. Tube is a very simple algorithm, and that's part of what gives it the cleanness of sound that it has. Like, again, let's remind you, we can do this. And I'm going to tell you all about how it works. But if you don't want the magic destroyed, you should just go and download it now and have this kind of fun if you want. Or maybe a little more subtle. And be fine and happy with everything that it does. This is a particularly good plugin as far as not ruining the sound of anything. It's very well behaved. And it should be, tell you what, give me a second. I'm just shutting the machine down for a second because I have talking to do. So now that all of this is a little bit less exciting, and now that you've seen Tube and also the things Tube can do when you turn it on, which is of course very exciting, I'll turn it off, and we're going to have a minute and talk about how this actually does what it does. And it's going to be boring, it's going to be honest, and it's going to explain how this happens. So if you like the magic, and you don't want the magic ruined, go and download Tube from the links that I'll supply, and use it and enjoy it. Now that said, now let's talk a little bit about how this works. Tube is a little wave shaper. It's a little thing where it's kind of like my sine wave shapers. It smooths stuff off. It's got a distortion on it. And the reason it gives the effect that it does is it's very carefully calibrated to handle full range signals, as in anything that you could want that's between -1 and 1 in the range of how big samples are. So the upshot with that is Tube makes stuff louder while distorting it. Now the way that it does this is I did in fact come up with a new algorithm But this is not a new algorithm in that people know how to do this. It's the way that I was applying it that matters, and the fact that I'm doing it like with very long word lengths and I'm handling everything very Airwindows-y. That's the gist of how that works. But the basics are simply, it's a distortion. It's a very kind of soft, smooth distortion that rounds off stuff rather than hard clipping it. And it's just sort of variations on parabolic distortion. There's a lot of that about. What makes it different is that I came up with an algorithm where I can kind of switch between different levels of this parabolic distortion. Like I'll fire it up again. I'm not playing any music through it, but if I have it cranked up this loud, it is actually the cleanest of the parabolic distortions that you could have. It is a very simple algorithm. It has the maximum boost, and then if I dial it back like this, we're doing something more characteristic of what I was doing in Macity. Macity would probably be relatively equivalent to around here, maybe. I got it set up so that it is changing the curve of how the distortion goes, and the farther you go towards zero, the more linearity is sitting in the middle of the waveform, and the less total boost you get. And there's two different kinds of boosts here. One of the boosts is the gain normalization boost, which means that if you engage the maximum tube, which this is the maximum tube, what you get is the hardest clipping you can possibly have, but very, very soft. And then it has an exact gain correction in, so it is making up for the gain that was lost. And that's how that works. That's why the maximum tube is a boost. And the other part is another boost. And what I did was calculate out what RMS loudness you got out of a triangle wave or a sawtooth wave, as that is a fairly common kind of sound for many different frequencies all playing together, as in a mix, final music. Your final music, if it is like running peak to peak and has a wide variety of harmonics balanced properly, it's probably going to be more like a triangle or a sawtooth wave kind of thing, rather than like a square for Loud Nation or a sine. And what I did was calculate exactly how much boost you needed to do in order to take a triangle wave and give it exactly the RMS loudness of a perfect sine wave. The upshot of this is, using tube, if you go to the full boost of tube, it's getting the exact amount of pre-gain, so that if you start out with a regular waveform or a mixdown or a track or anything that you want to do, which has any combination of roundness, fullness, pretty much anything you would put through it at all, it will throw exactly as much boost on it that the amount of clipping you wind up with isn't obvious. And that's the final piece of what makes tube, and the control tube in all caps, tube. The way that this works is it's basically a marketing boost applied to the cleanest saturation, the smoothest, warmest distortion I've been able to come up with yet. And I didn't invent it, because part of how you do that is by using the simplest possible algorithm. And that's what it is. So tube is a funny combination of a wonderful plugin that's very useful to have and a toy. It's like one of those plugins that's designed to have people all freak out and, oh my goodness, this is magic. Every time I turn it on, it sounds better. Yeah, because there's a marketing boost in it. But it's an exact boost. It's designed so that, yes, you're getting distortion. That's kind of the point. That's kind of what that's about. but you're also getting calibrated boosts in there to make sure that it can't hurt you. Like when you do, like I'm talking and my gain is fairly low. I can dial it back. I've been learning how to do control surfaces better, and that's exciting. I have recommendations for how you should run control surfaces if you have something like, I don't know, the Korg Nano Control that I have all painted up and set up. But if you've got your levels going so that it's sounding like this, and then you have maximum boost, I will hit it, and now I am completely over loud, but it is not boosting so much as to make it sound super unreasonable, obnoxiously fat or anything. Everything is being brought in to the point where it's still feasible and not a bit more. So that is the true secret of the Tube plugin. I feel like, I'm too loud. Let me just quiet down again. It's going to be hard to deal with that not being engaged, right? It makes everything sound better. The whole secret behind this plugin is I was working on these very smooth saturations and the ways of getting the best sound out of them. And part of that is less processing. I think this might be significantly less processing even than the ones that I have that are based on a sine wave. And I know that if I distort, say, sine waves and stuff using this technique, the shapes of the sort of rounded rectangle waves that I get are much nicer than I get even with using actual sines for the purpose. So I think this is probably going to be one of my best saturations, and it was designed so that I could get that information when I go and do other things, like when I go and do a emulation of something's going to distort. One of the things that I did was work out how to do asymmetrical distortions, and there's probably a lot of useful things that I can do with that too. But it started to become apparent as I was working on this that I had the makeup gain exactly calibrated. I had this and that exactly calibrated. I could put in a little boost going in and have it be completely transparent up to a certain point, which I calculated out. And the whole thing just turned itself into a one knob, all caps, Tube plugin that's likely to make people very excited, both because it's doing that marketing boost thing. It's got that thing going where, especially if you crank it out, everything's better, nothing's worse, everything's perfect in every way. And if you dial it back, you get the same effect, but more subtly. You get to dial in how obvious you want your everything's perfect. But the way it's being implemented is sort of a new high bar for me getting sounds out of absolutely minimal processing on extremely long word lengths and respecting the way that those word lengths are handled. And there's an interesting twist to this. This is another one of those plugins where I'm doing stuff with high sample rate, and it's designed to be able to do the high sample rate, although it'll run just fine at 44.1K. It's not generating lots of harmonics, so for many sounds, it's going to be perfectly nice sounding, even if you're running at 44.1K. But if you're running at high sample rate, it's doing something a little bit special that my other plugins don't do. And that's helping it get its particular sound. You're hearing it right now. Well, you're not hearing it right now. I'll turn it on. You're hearing it right now at high sample rate. And the whole deal of how it's doing what it's doing, it's got that incredibly simple calculation for getting its rounding of the clipping and so on. But it is also doing a simple averaging going in and coming out. And when you're at like 96K or 88.2, whatever, a simple averaging is not within the realm of human hearing. It's not a very effective anti-aliasing filter. My other stuff is using biquad filters that are a lot steeper, and I can dial in things like little presence boosts and stuff and make it a much, much more effective anti-aliasing filter for something like a console system. And you're also hearing this all in the console system, but the tube effect is after that. But when I'm doing this simple averaging on something like this that's meant to be just drop it in anywhere you want something to be a little bigger and fatter, what that's going to do is it might not be resisting aliasing as well as using biquads, but when you don't actually have to, it's not actually rolling off highs in a significant way, but it is recalculating where your ear is at, so you're always hearing a combination of two samples at any one time, and that's increasing the linearity of what you do hear. There are similar techniques that are used in things like scanning and getting photos and stuff into the computer. You can do many instances of a scan and then average them all together, and your clarity in black regions and areas that are noisy get increased. This is the same thing. This is a particular little plugin that's designed to drop in anywhere in an existing system that already has whatever it needs as far as the aliasing, suppression, and so on, the designs that I've got. And it's just a little boost to that stuff. And the averaging that's happening, two stages of averaging, one before the distortion and one after, are probably the most high performance way I can get to give you that sort of tubey lushness and warmth, which we're hearing right now. Let me turn it back off again. Get you that tubey lushness and warmth, that bigness, and the extreme resolution in the mid-range, all of that kind of stuff. And it's a trade-off over having to get the super highs absolutely nailed. I hope you like this. This has been a fun little one to do. I think this coming Monday I'm going to be doing a much weirder, gnarlier, nastier plugin from out at the dawn of time. Somebody wanted multiband stuff from me, and I had this multiband thing once upon a time. I haven't ported it yet because it's horrible. It's called multiband distortion. And multiband distortion is crazy. And with a bit of luck, people will like that as well. But it sounds terrible. Tube does not sound terrible. Tube has marketing boosts built into it, and that's kind of part of how it does what it does. So it's designed to be exciting to people who just turn something on, switch out the bypass and go, oh my goodness, this is great. But in the correct context, it could be used by all manner of people. Just use it for what it is. It's a little bit of a boost stage, so a little bit of a saturation, warming, all of that kind of stuff. And it came out of me learning more about how to do this kind of thing. And I have every intention of applying that in future to lots of more cool stuff. And I'll get back to fiddling with things, playing with my synthesizers and getting new music for a change. I thought it would be nice to let you hear something that was relatively new rather than just all the old stuff, because I've been working like crazy getting everything together so that I can do that, and it works. And part of that is putting out Tube. All of this is supported by my Patreon. If you'd like me to get fancy samplers and stuff and model them, then the Patreon is gradually helping me do that, and it's going to happen. If you can't afford Patreon, please don't get on it. I'm doing fine. And I just hope you like this new plugin. It's definitely got its little ways, and I think a lot of people are going to really like it, especially the people who listened to me and saw that this was a really long video and saw that I was starting to go on and on and on and decided to just trust me and go, this is a magic plugin. I'm going to stop listening and just try it. those are the people who it's going to be like Christmas morning, and they're going to be like, oh, goody. And if you've stuck around, I told you why. And there are good reasons about that as well as bad reasons. If you want to hear more about marketing boosts, then think critically about all the plugins that you get, not just mine, where I'm telling you the secret. And thank you very much for bearing with me for 20 minutes of talking and talking after I showed the new plugin. I'll see some of you folks on Monday as I start porting over this horrifying multiband distortion plugin that's a strange creature to VST, which is I think what I'm going to do. And I'll talk to you folks later. Bye-bye.